Ty Campbell with Bass Musician Magazine, and today we are interviewing none other than extraordinary bassist Vail Johnson. Good morning, Vail.
Good morning, Ty. What's happening, man?
It's a good day.
Yeah, yeah.
So, to get started, how did you first get interested in playing bass?
Well, I come from a musical family, so all my brothers and I'm the youngest of seven boys, and all the brothers and our mom and her whole side of the family, we're all professional musicians. We have stuff dating back to the late 1800s, evidence of some of our forebearers that were in music. So being around the house all the time was just music was everywhere. And I'm a little kid and everybody's practicing their instruments. And so it was just a normal thing, everybody to be interested in music. What really got me for bass was when I first heard Beatles. And it was Rubber Soul. Pretty sure that was the first one, 67, 66, something like that. I heard that and the bass notes literally jumped out at me. It sounded to me like the bass was louder than everything. It literally was how I heard it. The bass notes were everything else was not important. And I've kind of kept that feeling throughout my career. But I heard that bass, and that's when I wanted to start playing bass. I'd already been playing trumpet in the school bands. I started that in fourth grade, like everybody did in Seattle. You start in fourth grade, you play in the or the concert bands. They had great music in the schools. So I heard that. And then once I was in junior high, my dad bought me, I got a bass and a little amp and the garage band thing. And it was just hooked on playing bass ever since. I just never wanted to stop.
Awesome. Can you tell us about some of the artists you have worked with?
I can tell you a tiny bit about a couple of them because there's been so many. I've probably, I mean, I don't, I'm sure it's more than 100 different bands and artists that I've worked with. When I was in LA, I was working with, scheduling into probably 8, 9, 10 different bands currently, and just always doing one tour, come back, do this, doing a sessions, doing in-town gigs. So many. But I think that other than, people know me for the Kenny G stuff. That's the longest standing, gig I played with Kenny for 33 years. But there's so much other stuff. I think people might be surprised to know that I toured with Herbie Hancock. That was a lot of fun. And then you can go the other direction. I was music director for David Cassidy when he did his comeback in the 90s. And that was fantastic. It was so much fun doing that. I mean, so then you have, some of the old classics like Edgar Winter. I recorded and played with him, Stevie Nicks, and Whitney Houston. I played on Bodyguard back in the day. And then there's MC Hammer and Young MC. I played on their records as well. Just all kinds of different stuff. A lot of the jazz guys that are fantastic musicians like Eric Marienthal, Frank Gambale, Korea Electric Band. Warren Hill, fantastic sax player from Canada. I must have done at least 5 albums with him, stuff like that. More recently, I toured and recorded with the Kebmo here in Nashville. We both moved here in 2010, and I met him before I even had furniture in my house. I never knew him in LA. He was born and raised in LA, and I lived there 22 years. But I met him through Terry Woolman, a mutual friend, great guitar player and contractor, music director. And he hooked us up, and I met Keb, and we hit it off right away. So he's got a great place out in the west part of Franklin, and did a couple records with him. Went on the road for a couple years with him, in between Kenny tours, and that was a ball too. Met a lot of new people working with him, and so yeah, it's just never ending, and so many people. That's part of what I'm sure we'll get into is my new solo show is all about that. It's about telling stories, and it's playing music and telling stories about all these different people I've worked with, and the stories that are fit for polite company, and then I'll play a song. It's all just in bass and vocal, and I do the looper thing, and so yeah, there's been so many, yeah, and that's why I'm doing this solo show. Every show is totally different. There've been so many different. I've got Paula Abdul stories, playing with her. I mean, there's all kinds of great.
Cool. Any particular studio dates, road gigs that have some great stories behind them?
There's a ton of them. There's a ton of them, and I couldn't possibly figure out where to even start. That's one again. That's one of the reasons for the show. There's so many different things. I do remember my first sessions with Jeff Porcaro. It was pretty funny. I mean, obviously, great player, great in the studio, and I remember something notable about him is that he would play two takes and set his sticks down and light up a joint. That was it. Time for the overdubs. So I thought that's pretty damn cool. He had a lot of confidence, and he played, in a way that made his confidence completely justified. That was fun. That was when I was new to LA and kind of up and coming, and that was an interesting experience to see how he handled those. Man, there's so many things. How about here's a funny one. When I was playing at Universal Amphitheater, AG is in LA. At that time, this was it was really big, like 90, 89, 90 or something. I mean, it was a legitimate pop star. We're selling out, stuff like the Bridgestone Arena every night, 15,000 every night, all across the country. Michael Bolton's opening act. And so we're doing our last number and playing this tune where Kenny goes out in the audience and we're just up there jamming, the band is up there. We're just on this funk groove and Kenny's wandering around doing his thing. And at one point I hear some sort of weird jingling sound behind me, maybe percussion or something. But I thought it was weird because Ron, our percussionist, is right here to my right. And I look around, I turn around, and Stevie Nicks had gone over to Ron's percussion rig, taken a tambourine, and she's behind me playing the tambourine and twirling and just grooving with this, we're playing a thing like, and she's back there twirling this tambourine. I'm going, cool. That's pretty fun. So, and that's where I met her, and I did her next album, The Other Side of the Mirror. I met her at Universal, but stuff like that, it's just, and there's endless stories about things that have happened. It's crazy.
Are you currently working on any new projects or releases?
My thing now is my solo show that I call Around the World in 40 Years. And I guess you have to be a certain age to get the connection to that old, it's a book and a movie, I guess, Around the World in 80 Days, doing it in a balloon. Anyway, Around the World in 40 Years, that's where I'm doing, some original and a lot of covers of the artists I worked with. And I would say, for example, I'd tell that story about Stevie Nicks. And then I have my looper and I'm singing, all these tunes. And I'd say, okay, well, I'll do a Stevie Nicks tune or something. And I'd start out. Then I'd go on to play, The Chain or something like that. And then I'd go on and tell a story about Pip or Edgar Winters and play this music and telling stories and kind of giving people all this sort of background information into what it's like touring. Literally, I've been touring the world for 40 years, and I didn't want to. I don't want to die with all of that, all those memories in my head. I really want to get them out there so people can enjoy them. But I'm not interested in doing a video. I don't want to write a book. For me, the live connection meaningful. So I'm doing that. I'm doing that again here in Nashville in a couple of weeks, and having fun with that. That's really my focus. I bought an RV. I'm traveling around the eastern part of the U.S. so far, doing my solo shows in that, and still doing AG stuff, but I'm doing a bunch of different things. Looking at it, there's a couple things in the works that could be kind of a genre shift for me that could be kind of fun next year. Really concentrating on doing this solo gig. It's really rewarding to interact with audience, and a lot of it's kind of comedy, not necessarily intentionally, but I'm just out there. And so when people respond to me and we'll go back and forth, and it's sort of a de facto comedy club stuff sometimes, because I have a crazy, we have a little cat here that's talking to me, and just having fun with it and just having fun. I've been doing this for so long. I just want to do something that's interesting and maybe can find something, encouraging or inspiring.
What gear do you use in the studio and on the road?
All right. Well, after taking a bit of a break from them for some time, I'm especially kind of the motivation for it was my solo show. I got back into doing my Vicky's, the X Factor. This particular one right here with all the wounds. This is the one that I got. This is the one I got in 1986 over at Phil's factory there in Santa Barbara. So I'm using the Kubicki. I have beautiful two other basses that I use because 5 string, as we know, is maybe not, I wouldn't say necessary, but certainly, well, it's needed in a lot of kinds of music that use the low range, and people are used to it. So you got to have that range. And so I do have two beautiful fives out of Roscoe that I have set up with a double precision setup, Roscoe 5 that Keith made for me in a really special finish. It's wild. And then Mike Tobias made me a 5-string precision setup that's unbelievable as well. I'm using those for my amps. I've gone back to doing a component systems. I'm using Ashley preamps and Crest power amps on double 15s, with horn. Sometimes I use my double 12s, the DK stuff. But as far as the heads go, man, I just can't. I haven't found anything new that I like, and I definitely don't. And people get so mad at me. I mean, I've been booted off of both the big bass websites. I've been banned. It's something Jeff Berlin and I happily share. We talk about it all the time. That we've both been banned from Bass Chat and Talk Bass because we have opinions about things. And his is about music education and teaching, and mine's about equipment. And I just don't like any of the new stuff. I just don't like it. The cheap Class D amps, for me, they just don't do it. They don't have the transit attack and that I'm looking for. And when I say cheap Class D, anything under $2,000 is a cheap Class D. Because to get a really good Class D, you're going to spend 3, 4, 5,000 just for the power amp. And the cheap ones that come in ask, I just don't like them. And lots of guys love them. And I've heard guys sound really great playing them. I just don't like them. So I'm using this old school stuff. I mean, I think my Crest power amp weighs 75 pounds just by itself. That's not with the rack. It's 100 pounds. People complain about taking SVTs, but I'm carrying just the power amp alone, is more than an SVT, and then, but I love my Ashley preamp, really great. I just love that. So kind of gone back to the old style, the big lead sled, however you want to talk about them, the power amps but my basses also thing is 33 almost. I got this in June of '86, isn't this May 8th? And so it's gonna be 34. Wow. Anyway, yeah, that's the gear in the studio. Man, there's nothing that beats a good P bass. Now that Roscoe 5 I have, it's fantastic in the studio. And I always I use hanging around here. I really like the radial DIs. For an active bass, I'll use the JDI. It's a passive. And for a passive bass, I'll use their active DI, the J48, I think it is. And go straight into the board. Never use compression. I always use compression in mixdown. Never use it to track. The other thing that got people mad at me. I don't like pedals. I don't like compression. I don't like man. You get this little pedal. Think about it. You get this little tiny little pedal with all this little micro circuitry stuff, and it just how much quality are they going to build into this little thing that costs $18 board? It's gonna be. And you're gonna get me started, and people are gonna be mad at me. And it's not just I'm not just an old guy. I just like stuff that doesn't get in the way of my fingers, And any compression always gets in the way of what you're doing, So I can't stand it. Every time I do a gig with a new sound man, I always butter him up and try to get to know him a little bit, before I ask him, can you please not use any compression on this? Definitely not while we're tracking, please, because, it just, anything gets in the way of this, to me, it's a drag.
I want to tell you why I love the new MJC Ironworks bass strings. So I'm using the nickel round wound And I love the smooth feel. Even more, I love the evenness in response and consistency of the tension between the strings. So I think it's largely due to their manufacturing process, which is more of an old school, hands-on, really working the machines and not any sort of automated or computer-aided deal. So it's just like a great string from the 80s and 90s. You just can't beat them. It's just such a welcome surprise. And so the MJC Ironworks bass strings are the real deal, man, and I just love them. Any style of music, there's no such thing as a rock string or a funk string, I think that's all silliness. This string, it just gives what your fingers are asking them to do. And that's the bottom line. So it doesn't get in the way. It's just a great all-around full-range response. And I couldn't be happier.
The studio, I just used into the radial DIs, right in the board, done. Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me too. Do you have any advice for aspiring bassist?
Yeah, don't think about the equipment. That's it. Borrow a line from my all-time favorite, yet sadly disgraced bicycle racer, Lance Armstrong. I was so disappointed it turned out that he was Keaton along with everybody else. That makes it okay. But man, I was a big fan of Lance. When people are asking him, people asking him about equipment. And I'm not saying I'm Lance Armstrong of the bass. I'm not saying that. But you can get inspiration from him. And when he had his answer to the question about equipment was, it ain't the bike. And so I got to tell you, I think young bass players get, it's great to be excited about getting into this thing, and getting equipment is fun. I still like, looking around at new things and playing something different. But a lot of young guys can really get, I look at some of the online forums and hear these guys that are beginners and they're saying, well, what sort of pedals do I need? Like, you don't need any pedals. You don't need any of that. It's ridiculous. You need a bass and an amp or something to plug it into to get sound out of. You can have a bass and use one of those headphone amps, whatever. But don't put anything else in between the bass and where the sound is coming out of, at least to start. Because you're not going to learn how to play if you're using all of these other things that are just distractions. It's distracting you from learning. It's distracting you from developing a good tone. Is altering your tone. So now you're learning to play differently, and the little boxes are dictating how you're playing. So it's like, man, just forget about all that stuff for a minute and get comfortable, learn how to play. Just learn how to play, how to manipulate the bass with your hands. I mean, people ask me, what kind of effects do you use? I got 10 of them. And I literally mean it. I use all 10 of them. They all do different things. And they do different things for different styles and different stuff, And whenever I see, here's another one. Don't put the frickin' scrunchie on your neck. It kills me when I see people doing that. Don't do it. It's crazy. Now, unless you have a huge flowing ponytail and you really need a scrunchie and you want to wave your hair around and you need some place to put it, okay, put it on the end. That's the only reason I ever want to see anybody with the frickin' scrunchie or the mute or whatever. Come on, man. It's nuts. You got to learn how to deaden the strings with your other fingers in your hand. Come on. These are, oh boy. It's ridiculous. Learn how to play the bass. And the thing is, there are infinite ways to learn. There are infinite things you can play on the instrument. It's never ending. You're only limited by your own creativity. All of the boxes and all that stuff in the world, it can be fun to play with. It's great, fun, but it's not helping you learn, and it's not helping you play. It's not helping you get work. I'll tell you that either. So learn how to play the bass, have fun, but you got to get the sound from your fingers. Not coming from a box. Don't use the box. Avoid the boxes for a minute. I suggest drinking 8 to 10 cups of coffee in the morning, and that helps when you're old, like me.
Can you provide us with links for your websites?
Yeah, it's just vailjohnson.com. That's all it is.
And the last question for the interview, everybody's dying to know, do you prefer your cupcakes with sprinkles or without?
I love them with sprinkles. With.
There we go.
Thank you very much.